night slips through the cracks of the Ryman like cigarette smoke, curling around guitars that haven't cooled since 1963. Onstage, Johnny Cash and June Carter Cash trade smiles bright enough to blind the balcony, but backstage their words clash like broken glass swept into a paper bag. Rumor whispers she once called him the storm I married, and today that storm is thundering again. June knew tempests early. Being a Carter meant learning harmonies before multiplication tables, yet it also meant watching men promise forever then vanish at sunrise. When she shared a bill with Johnny in '56, his baritone rattled her ribcage, but so did the half-empty pills rattling in his pocket. She laughed, he winked, and Nashville started scripting a fairy tale. She was already editing the ending. By 1961, the tour bus smelled of coffee, sweat, and quiet disgust. Johnny woke everyone at 3 a.m., practicing a new riff, and June's diary, kept in green ink so he wouldn't read it, logged every jolting chord. Another night, another broken curtain rod, another apology sweet as kerosene. The band called her Mama June. She called herself Warden with a Tambourine. The dark powder began steering the wheel. Reporters wrote exhaustion when Johnny crashed a truck near El Paso. June wrote 7 lives left. She followed him into pharmacies like a Secret Service agent, buying lollipops so cashiers wouldn't notice him swapping prescriptions. Friends swear she once flushed a whole stash down a gas station toilet, then drove 4 hours in silence while he punched the dash until his knuckles split. He told the crew he'd cut himself changing strings. Maybelle Carter watched their courtship with a mandolin across her lap and a question behind her teeth. At picnics, she heard June hum off-key whenever Johnny walked by, like a tuning fork rejecting its pitch. Sisters Anita and Helen took bets on how long the glare behind June's grin could stay hidden. They stopped betting after the Las Vegas hotel incident in '67. That night, the hallway smelled like lilies and minibar whiskey. Johnny passed out face down on a shag carpet studded with pill bottles. June dialed the front desk, voice icy enough to frost the receiver. "Send a doctor who won't call the papers." When Johnny came to, June's wedding dress was dangling from the lampshade, scorched where a cigarette had slept too long. She cut the burnout with nail scissors and kept the scrap in a Bible margin, proof that vows sometimes smolder. Their 1968 proposal looked tender on film, Johnny dropping to one knee during a duet in Ontario. But the tape doesn't catch June whispering, "Stand up before you fall over." She said yes. The crowd roared, and a backstage microphone caught her muttering, "Let's see if marriage can muzzle a tornado." Matrimony did what duct tape does to a cracking pipe, slowed the leak, didn't fix the pressure. The Johnny Cash Show premiered in '69, a weekly carnival of hymns and rebellious swagger. Viewers loved the chemistry, staffers loved to bet on how many takes before June stopped rolling her eyes. She hid tension behind jokes, calling him "my walking pharmacy" mid-rehearsal, then feeding the line to the censor as playful banter. Folsom reverberated like thunder in a tin cup. After the album soared, Cash's backstage guest list ballooned with groupies and businessmen who slipped him little envelopes. One roadie recalls June cornering Johnny in a broom closet, hissing, "You're too famous for plain mistakes. Every wrong step is a headline." He answered by kicking the door so hard the knob embedded in drywall. Private investigators started shadowing the man in black. Some say hired by the label, others whisper by June herself. They reported midnight cruises down Lower Broadway, crumpled beer cans, a mystery brunette leaving his car at dawn, and pharmacy receipts tagged cash. June read the files, underlined danger in red, then folded them into origami swans she burned in an ashtray. By 1975, Johnny vowed clean living on stage while hiding a flask of cough syrup laced with codeine in his boot. June, studying applause from the wings, felt like a stagehand polishing mirrors for a magician who'd forgotten the trick. She tried ultimatums. Cancel the European tour or sleep alone. He chose the jet. She chose a separate hotel floor. And tabloids printed photos of her ring finger conspicuously bare during soundcheck. The darkest Relapse hit in '81. Johnny's doctor prescribed painkillers after a cracked rib. Soon the pills partnered with coke and a pinch of needle poison old friends thought he'd buried. June found him in the studio bathroom staring at a mirror that wouldn't focus. She marched him to rehab like a mother dragging a boy to detention. Outside the clinic gate, she reportedly muttered, "I love you, but I won't drown just to keep you company." Nurses nicknamed her the Sergeant with Lipstick. Rehab stamped him sober, yet resentment left fingerprints. During a 1984 recording session, Johnny flubbed the bridge to Jackson, and June snapped, "Try singing it like you remember who you married." Engineers pretended to adjust levels while tension buzzed louder than the amps. The take made the final cut. Listeners called it raw passion. Meanwhile, June's solo ambitions dimmed. Managers suggested her gospel album might chart if Johnny stopped overshadowing every interview, but press agents only wanted the couple. At home, she practiced chord progressions alone, murmuring, "Duets feel lonelier than solos when the applause fades." One night, she locked the studio door and recorded an unreleased track titled "Second Spotlight," lyrics scribbled on a diner napkin. "I'm not the echo of a deeper voice. I'm the thunder you ignore by choice." The tape stayed in a drawer, but every polished myth breeds a counter-myth. In 2008, a former Carter cousin sold a thumb drive to a gossip site, claiming it held voicemails Johnny left on June's motel phones, late-night rambles slurred with regret. One audio clip allegedly captured June replying under her breath, "Sing it to the mirror, cowboy." Lawyers pounced. The files vanished, though snippets surfaced on Reddit for a weekend before disappearing like smoke. The arguments over authenticity outlasted the leaks. Money always stirs the pot. After Johnny's passing, publishing royalties, and an unnamed executor, mystery cuts bigger headlines than charity. The feud even spilled into the studio vaults. Archivists cataloging reel-to-reel tapes discovered alternate takes where June's harmony track was stripped out entirely, replaced by a studio singer to soften the tension audible in her voice. A notepaper clip to one reel read, "Use if J is too angry." Fans debate whether the J meant Johnny or June. Another reel bore the scrawl, "She won't face him today, layer later." Musicologists argue these edits reveal a work marriage that sometimes required separation to finish a love song. Not every witness talks, but Nashville barbers and bus drivers have long memories. One driver, now retired, remembers a snowy Iowa night when June asked him to keep the bus engine running so she could rehearse alone at 2 a.m. She strummed Wildwood Flower while crying hard enough to fog every window. He offered tissues. She waved him away and said, "I'm watering my own garden." He never knew if she meant grief or growth. Psychologists might call it codependence. Poets call it a duet. Whatever the term, the arrangement required both voices, even when those voices creaked with fatigue. Letters from session players describe late-night rehearsals where June corrected Johnny's tempo by tapping her shoe so hard the floorboards splintered. One bassist claims she once whispered to him, "If I stop keeping time, everything falls apart." He thought she meant the song. Years later, he decided she meant the marriage. Religious faith added another layer of friction. June's devotion ran deep, rooted in revival tent childhood. Johnny, battling temptations under neon lights, vacillated between sinner and Sunday morning penitent. They prayed together, yes, but insiders say June sometimes prayed that God would quiet the volcano before it erupted. When Johnny's memoir painted her as his savior, church friends wondered if she ever resented being cast as angel in residence, when she felt more like a fatigued paramedic patching bullet holes. A 1997 Backstage scuffle nearly derailed everything. According to a stagehand's diary, Johnny accused June of removing the batteries from his wireless mic to sabotage a finale he hadn't rehearsed. She shot back that he'd sabotaged himself long ago. The batteries were downstairs on the charger. He hurled the mic. It dented a steel door and still buzzed feedback. Proof, she said, that even broken things make noise. Despite the turbulence, creative sparks kept flying. If I Were a Carpenter won them a Grammy, yet the studio log notes 5 takes ended in argument about pronouncing lover. The final cut captured the slight edge that sent the song up the charts. Radio stations spun it as romance. Those who were there recall it as veiled negotiation. Journalists chasing the rumored June despised Johnny angle often run into a brick wall. Contradictory anecdotes. For every story of clenched jaws, there's one of handwritten love notes taped to guitar cases. One surviving note reads, "Make them cheer, John. I'll harmonize till they scream." Another counters with her scribble on a hotel notepad, "I harmonize so they won't hear us break." The truth wobbles between. Legacy businesses, however, prefer tidy tales. The 2016 Cash and Carter love story cruise sold out in hours, featuring tribute bands on a riverboat. Passengers sipped bourbon fudge sundaes while impersonators reenacted the proposal. No one reenacted the Las Vegas dress burn or the broom closet door dent. Tourism thrives on romance, not rumble. Yet the music itself occasionally tattles. Listen to the 1973 live version of "Help Me Make It Through the Night." Mid-song, June's harmony drops for a breath longer than the sheet music allows, as if she's deciding whether to keep singing. Johnny fills the gap with a growl, and the crowd never notices. Some audio engineers isolate that moment in workshops to demonstrate improvisational rescue. Romantics dissect it for hidden heartbreak. After their deaths, academic conferences sprang up analyzing Carter Cash dynamics. One paper argued that Southern Gothic literature influenced their lyrical exchanges, painting June as the iron-willed matriarch from a Flannery O'Connor tale trapped in a bus, rolling down a highway of moral decay. Another claimed their marriage mirrored Cold War diplomacy, mutually assured destruction kept at bay by gospel choruses. The fact that scholars could spin entire theories on a simple country duet speaks to how richly their friction fueled art. Still, the human details cut deeper than dissertations. A nurse from Baptist Hospital recalls June sneaking homemade soup into Johnny's room after dietitians banned salt. She slipped in a spoonful, said, "Forgive me, doctor, but comfort outranks compliance tonight." He smiled wider than morphine ever managed. Despising someone, rumors aside, rarely involves hand-blended chicken broth. 3 months before she passed, June taped a message for their grandchildren. She said every marriage has arguments that echo louder than vows, but melody can outlast noise if both singers remember the tune. She also said, "Your granddaddy is the most frustrating miracle I ever met." The tape remained private until a relative played it at a family reunion, sparking fresh debate. Was frustrating miracle a loving nickname or a final eye roll? Storytellers pick sides. Songs don't. Flip a vinyl of "It Ain't Me, Babe," and you'll hear her voice weaving under his like thread holding a quilt's edges. Maybe she despised parts of him. The impatient glare, the relapse excuses, the crowd that shouted his name louder than hers. Maybe he despised disappointing her. Yet together, they forged a sound that still rattles dashboard speakers on midnight drives across America's lonelier roads. And here's the kicker the tabloids miss. Contempt can coexist with devotion the way lightning lives inside a storm cloud. Lightning scares you. It also lights your way home. When the man in black sang about walking the line, perhaps the line was her patience stretched between fury and faith, and each step sparked a chord. So next time somebody swears June Carter secretly hated Johnny Cash, maybe nod, maybe shrug, but listen closer. In the creek at the end of Ring of Fire, she's laughing, low, almost lost under the brass. But it's there. Is it joy, sarcasm, both? The ambiguity might be the most honest note ever recorded. Because real stories rarely end with clear-cut answers. They end with echoes, with unanswered voicemails, with scorch marks on wedding gowns and letters locked in attics. They end with the audience wanting one more chorus even after the band has packed up, and if June did harbor quiet contempt, she also harbored enough rhythm to keep time until Johnny caught up. That complicated grace, half anchor, half cannon fire, is the kind of love that keeps history humming. But the gaps between show dates sometimes screamed louder than any amplifier. In 1990, the couple rented a cabin on Old Hickory Lake, a week meant for fishing and rest. Yet by the second night, neighbors called the sheriff about shouting that rolled across the water like distant thunder. The official report lists marital dispute, no charges filed, but the deputy's notes mention shattered glass on the porch and June walking barefoot over splinters to hand Johnny a blanket when the temperature dropped. Years later, that same deputy would tell a reporter, "I'd never seen two people trade anger and tenderness so fast." Christmas of '93 brought another fracture, hidden behind tinsel and televised specials. Carter family tradition required each relative to perform one song after dinner. When June finished a haunting farther along, Johnny clapped too slowly, lost somewhere in painkillers prescribed for a recent jaw infection. June set her guitar down and told him quietly, "Applause without attention is worse than silence." No cameras captured the moment, yet a cousin swears Johnny did not touch another pill that night. Their final decade blended fragile peace with aftershocks. Doctors warned Johnny that touring risked collapsing lungs and failing kidneys, but he insisted music was the only pulse he trusted. June adapted by turning greenroom tables into mobile pharmacies, vitamins, glucose monitors, peppermint oil, and a tiny metronome that clicked steady as a heartbeat. She would start it whenever he seemed disoriented, letting the tempo guide him back to present tense. Technicians joked that you could track venue power outages by the moments her metronome stopped. In quieter hours, they wrote letters to each other, paradoxically more honest than their face-to-face talks. One unopened envelope found in a guitar case after Johnny's death begins, "If nights ever get too loud inside your head, remember the creek behind our farm. It still knows your name." Scholars debate whether Johnny ever read it. The crease mark suggests he opened and resealed it at least twice, which feels perfectly on brand for a man forever halfway through confession. Rumor claims they planned a joint farewell album titled Fault Lines, tracking 30 duets in chronological order of each argument they survived. Studio logs confirm at least 3 recordings under that project code, including a rough take where June blurts, "Quit hiding harmony behind thunder," and Johnny responds by modulating into a minor key so abrupt the engineer thought the tape had warped. The label shelved the idea, fearing it was too raw for mass consumption, but bootleggers still trade snippets on dusty forums. When June's heart valve surgery loomed in May 2003, friends noticed a rare serenity in Johnny. He spent afternoons in her hospital room reciting psalms in a voice barely above a humming amp. A nurse recalled peeking in to find June asleep, Johnny holding her hand and tapping 2 fingers against her wrist in perfect 4/4 time, keeping tempo even as monitors beeped irregular syncopations. After her passing, he told a reporter, "The rhythm section just dropped out," then canceled the rest of the interview. 8 sunset months later, his own body followed hers, leaving fans to argue whether grief or illness wrote the final measure. Medical charts list respiratory failure, but believers claim you can still hear June calling him home on stormy nights when thunder rolls at the exact pitch of her alto. Maybe that's myth. Maybe it's hope wearing a cowboy hat. Either way, when lightning sketches their silhouettes across Tennessee clouds, nobody bothers counting how many seconds until the next rumble. They simply let the harmony carry them to silence. Cue the fade out, a lone harmonica trailing off into Tennessee dusk, leaving us wondering whether the last note belonged to harmony or discord. Either way, it still gets stuck in your head. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.